The day Mara walked back into my life, I barely recognized the young woman she had become. She had left our home months ago, full of arrogance and certainty, chasing a life of glamour and wealth with someone she thought would sweep her off her feet. I remember the day she called from Europe, her voice dripping with excitement about the opportunities waiting for her. And now, here she was, broken, exhausted, and desperate. She had nothing. Not a job, not a home, and certainly not the luxury she had imagined. Her phone calls had stopped, letters unanswered, and suddenly, the universe seemed to have knocked her down hard. I knew why she had returned. She needed help, but I also knew she needed more than just a handout. She needed to learn the lessons life had been trying to teach her. Mara stood in the doorway, clutching a small suitcase, her eyes flickering with both hope and shame. "Mom," she whispered, almost afraid to ask for anything. I stepped forward and hugged her tightly. She trembled in my arms, and for a moment, I felt the same ache I had felt when her father died, like I had to hold the world together for someone who had no idea how fragile it could be. "Welcome home." "Mara," I said softly, "it's going to be okay." The house was quiet, filled with memories of a life she had once taken for granted. I had kept everything intact, the photos, the furniture, even the garden she loved as a child. It was as if time hadn't moved, and yet everything had changed. Mara looked around, her eyes lingering on the familiar corners, hesitant to speak. "Mom, I don't know where to start," she admitted, her voice breaking. "You start by being honest," I replied. "Tell me everything, every mistake, every regret. I can handle it." She sank into the sofa, burying her face in her hands. "I left everything behind for him, and now I have nothing. I'm lost, Mom. Completely lost." I held her hand, feeling the weight of her desperation. She had to learn that life's lessons cannot be bought or avoided. They have to be felt, faced, and overcome. I had a plan. A slow, careful plan to show her the value of responsibility, respect, and self-reliance. But first, she had to hit rock bottom completely. As I watched her cry, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and anticipation. The next few weeks would be a trial for both of us, but it was necessary. Mara would need to struggle, work, and make mistakes to truly understand the cost of her previous choices. Only then could she rebuild herself, and our bond, on solid ground. Little did Mara know her greatest lessons and her most shocking revelations were just around the corner. And the first test would arrive sooner than she expected. What will Mara face first? In her journey back from despair? And will she even recognize the truth when it comes knocking? The next morning, Mara and I drove to the old city bank, a place that had always felt like a vault of secrets and memories. I had maintained my guise as a bewildered widow, and Mara had no reason to suspect anything beyond what she already believed, that we were scraping by, trying to survive the aftermath of her reckless choices. The bank manager greeted us politely and led us to a row of safety deposit boxes. Mara's curiosity was evident in the way she looked around, her fingers fidgeting with her coat zipper. When the manager opened box number 512, a world of glitter and color spilled into our hands. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, some old, some dazzlingly new. I recognized pieces that had belonged to her grandfather. Others were additions her father had secretly invested in over the years. Mara gasped. "Mom, this is incredible. Do you realize what this is worth?" I picked up a pearl and emerald necklace. "Your father wanted to keep a part of the family safe," I said softly. "But remember, these are more than just money. They're memories." She tilted her head, eyes wide. "Mom, we could sell some of this. We could fix the debts. Maybe even get the beach house back." Her mind went immediately to solutions. For Edward, the man who had caused so much chaos in her life, hesitated watching her. Even now, her first instinct was to use wealth to erase problems rather than learn from them. "Think carefully, Mara," I said. "Once you sell these, there's no undoing it. And not everything valuable has a price tag." But she was determined. Over the next few days, Mara cataloged every item, estimating what could be sold. I stayed in the background observing, letting her struggle with decisions that I knew she had never faced before. It was painful watching her reduce decades of family history to numbers and calculations, but essential. She needed to understand that wealth comes with responsibility, and that choices have consequences, the end of the week, Mara had negotiated with buyers and sold most of the jewels. She kept only a delicate ring her father had given me and a small heirloom necklace from her grandmother. Counting the bills on the kitchen table, she announced, "Mom, $185,000. It's enough to cover the most urgent debts, yes. But at what cost?" I asked quietly. She looked down, conflicted. "It's painful, Mom. But if I don't do this, everything will be lost. Even this house might be at risk," I nodded, silently proud of her determination and the small glimmer of responsibility that was beginning to shine through. Still, the real lesson had yet to arrive, the evidence that would free her entirely from Edward's deception and the revelation that would change everything she thought she knew about our lives. For now, Mara faced the immediate struggle of debt and survival. But a deeper truth, one she couldn't yet imagine, was quietly waiting to reveal itself. And when it did, it would shake her world. Completely, Mara thinks she's handling her troubles on her own. But what shocking discovery is about to change everything she believes about her past and her family's secrets? Once the jewels were sold and the money secured, Mara faced the harsh reality of what her actions had caused. She spread the remaining pieces across the kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the delicate heirlooms she had decided to keep. The room was filled with a quiet tension, the weight of responsibility settling over her like a heavy fog. "Can't believe I'm doing this," she whispered, "turning memories into money. It feels wrong. It's painful, I know," I said gently. "But sometimes we have to make difficult choices to survive. You're learning something no one could ever teach you otherwise." Mara nodded, her eyes distant. Even as she organized bills and payment plans, I could see her growing more thoughtful, more careful in her decisions. Gone was the impulsive woman who had chased dreams of luxury abroad. Here was someone who understood the value of effort, of consequence. That evening, a call came from Mr. Hawthorne, a lawyer we had engaged discreetly. "Mrs. Langston, I have important news regarding Edward's financial misdeeds," he said. "It appears he forged your daughter's signature on multiple loans. Legally, Mara is not responsible if we can prove coercion and fraud." Mara's head snapped up. "What? Does that mean I don't know anything?" Mr. Hawthorne's voice was calm, measured. "If we proceed, we can absolve her of all debts. However, the process will take weeks and will require careful legal documentation." I stayed silent, letting Mara feel the tension between despair and hope. She didn't know that I had already arranged the resources to ensure she would never face these debts alone. She would have to discover it on her own, and in doing so, truly appreciate the value of responsibility and hard work. Over the next days, Mara meticulously organized documents, contacted creditors, and learned the painful realities of adult responsibility. Even the smallest decisions felt monumental, deciding which debts to prioritize, negotiating with banks, keeping track of every payment. Each step taught her a lesson in discipline, patience, and humility. One afternoon, while Mara calculated her expenses for the week, she paused. "Mom, I feel like I'm finally seeing the world differently," she admitted. "Not just my life, but the way I think about responsibility, choices, and the people who love me." I smiled, proud but guarded. She still didn't know the full truth, that her struggles had been part of a carefully orchestrated plan, one designed not to punish her, but to teach her the lessons she needed most. Little did Mara know, the most critical revelation, the one that would free her entirely from Edward's shadow and redefine her understanding of our family's legacy, was just around the corner. Mara thinks she's facing her struggles alone, but a secret plan has been quietly unfolding, one that will change everything. She thought she knew about her past, her family, and herself. Mara's first weeks of hard work were grueling. She spent her nights cleaning offices while navigating a maze of creditor calls and legal forms. During the day, her body ached, her feet were sore, but a sense of purpose began to replace the despair in her eyes. She was no longer the spoiled daughter who expected life to hand her everything. She was learning the dignity of earning, the strength of perseverance. "Are you sure you can handle all this?" I asked one evening as we shared a modest dinner. "I have to," she replied, her voice steadier than it had been in weeks. "I can't keep relying on you. I need to stand on my own even if it hurts." I watched her, filled with both pride and heartbreak. She was discovering that true growth often comes through struggle, not comfort. The next evening, Aurora, my longtime friend, came to visit. Her sharp eyes immediately noted the change in Mara. "She looks different," Aurora said quietly, sipping her tea. "Not just sad, but humbled. I think she's finally learning what she took for granted." "She is," I admitted. "But she doesn't know the full story yet." Aurora frowned. "You mean the money you could have given her to solve all her problems?" "Yes. She needed to hit rock bottom to truly understand responsibility, gratitude, and respect. This wasn't punishment. It was education." Aurora shook her head in admiration. "It's brilliant and cruel at the same time." Meanwhile, Mara had been absorbing lessons from unexpected mentors. At her night job, Mrs. Green, a woman with decades of experience, shared wisdom that struck deeply. "There are two kinds of people in this work," she said one night. "Folding cleaning rags, those who never had opportunities, and those who lost the ones they were given. Which do you think you are?" Mara didn't hesitate. "I had everything and I lost it all. I followed the wrong man, chased the wrong dream, and abandoned the people who loved me." Mrs. Green smiled warmly. "Then you've already taken the hardest step, recognizing your mistakes. Now you can rebuild." The following days were a mix of exhaustion and reflection. Mara poured herself into her tasks, but also began contemplating her future in a way she never had. She realized that money alone could never fix the mistakes she had made. Respect, trust, and effort were far more valuable. One evening, as she washed the last dishes after a long day, she looked at me. "Mom, I understand now. I need to earn my own way, even if I have the resources to avoid struggle. I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own." I nodded, recognizing the moment. She had internalized the lessons I had hoped she would, and the real test was about to begin. The day she would discover that Edward's treachery had already been undone behind the scenes. Mara is learning the value of hard work and self-respect, but she has no idea that a revelation is coming that will free her from the weight of Edward's deceit forever. Weeks passed, and Mara's routine became a rhythm of effort and reflection. She rose before dawn, caught buses to her cleaning job, and returned home exhausted but quietly proud. I watched her grow stronger, more thoughtful, and more independent each day. Yet, I knew the most important part of her transformation was still hidden. She had no idea that Edward's fraudulent schemes had been exposed, and that her debts had been quietly cleared. One morning, while she organized her bills and notes on the kitchen table, the phone rang. It was Mr. Lawson, our trusted lawyer. "Mrs. Hartman, I have excellent news," he said. "We've gathered enough evidence to prove that your daughter was a victim of identity fraud. Edward forged her signature on multiple loans. She is not legally responsible for any of it." Mara listened in stunned silence, as I gently held her hand. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means," I said, choosing my words carefully, "that everything you've been struggling to pay off, legally, it was never yours to bear. You are free." Her eyes widened. "But how? Who paid for the investigation?" I smiled softly. "I did. You don't need to worry about that. The important thing is that this chapter is over. All the properties, the accounts, and the debts, they're taken care of." For a long moment, Mara simply stared at the documents, her fingers trembling. Then, as comprehension dawned, tears filled her eyes. But they were different tears. Tears of relief, gratitude, and understanding. Not despair. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "All these weeks, I thought I had to fix everything myself. I thought I was alone." "You weren't," I said. "But you had to face your challenges to truly learn. I didn't save you by giving you money. I saved you by letting you discover your strength." The room was silent except for the quiet rustle of papers. Mara wiped her tears and smiled faintly, the weight of guilt lifting from her shoulders. "Mom, I get it now. I understand the lessons I had to learn, and I want to keep earning my way. I don't want to take the easy path, even if I could." Her words filled me with pride. The daughter who had once chased illusions of wealth and status had grown into a young woman who understood dignity, effort, and true value. The experiences that had broken her had also rebuilt her. That night, as she went to her small room to rest, I sat quietly in the living room thinking about Robert. I had promised him I would guide our daughter wisely, and now, for the first time since his passing, I felt I had truly honored that promise. Mara's journey was far from over, but the heaviest burden, the one that had threatened to crush her life, had been lifted. The next steps would be about growth, purpose, and using her lessons to make a difference in the world. And she was ready. Mara is free from Edward's traps. But freedom alone is not the end. How will she choose to rebuild her life and her values after hitting rock bottom? The following days felt surreal. Mara moved through our home with a cautious optimism, a mix of relief and humility that was new to her. She no longer rushed to check emails or balance debts, because there were none left to haunt her. Yet she didn't relax into luxury. She kept her cleaning job, attending late-night shifts with quiet determination. "Why are you still working?" I asked one evening as she returned from her shift, tired but composed. Mara paused at the doorway, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because I need to remember what it feels like to earn my way. I want to respect my own effort. Mom, I need to know that I'm capable of standing on my own." Her words struck me deeply. For months she had believed that money could fix everything. Now she understood that independence, dignity, and accountability were far more valuable than any inheritance. Over the next week, Mara began organizing her own schedule and finances with a discipline I hadn't expected. She met with Mr. Lawson to ensure the legal documents were finalized, but she asked insightful questions rather than just relying on him to act. She started tracking her expenses, planning meals, and even setting aside small amounts from her modest paycheck. It was painful for her at first, adjusting from the life she had once imagined in Europe, but it was transformative. One afternoon, as she sorted through some old family photos, she spoke softly. "Mom, I realized that all this time I took everything for granted. Our home, our family, even your support. I never valued the effort that built it. I only thought about what I could get from it. You've learned now," I said, smiling, "and that's what matters." Mara nodded, determination in her eyes. "I want to do more than just survive. I want to use what I've learned to help others. There are so many women who struggle silently, with no one to turn to, just like I did. I want to be someone they can count on." It was a moment of revelation. Mara, who had once been focused on herself, was now looking outward, ready to make a meaningful difference. I felt a surge of pride. Her transformation was not just about responsibility or financial lessons. It was about empathy, compassion, and courage. That evening, we sat on the porch together, the sky painted with the hues of sunset. "Mom, I want to keep this house not just for us, but as a place for others in need. Maybe a shelter for women starting over," Mara said quietly. Her suggestion filled me with warmth. Robert had always believed that a home was meant to be shared, a place of refuge for anyone in need. And now Mara was carrying forward that legacy, not just preserving it, but expanding it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that the hardships, the tears, and the long nights of worry had all led to this. Mara had learned what I had hoped she would: strength, humility, and the courage to rebuild a life with purpose. Mara has found clarity and purpose, but will she have the courage and resources to turn her family home into a sanctuary for those in need? The following morning, Mara woke earlier than usual. She had made a list of the changes she wanted to implement at the beach house, and she was determined to start immediately. I watched her from the kitchen as she packed a bag with notebooks, pens, and her laptop. "Where are you going so early?" I asked, trying to hide my curiosity. "Want to visit the house and see what it will take to turn it into a safe place for women who are starting over," she replied, her voice steady and resolved. "I've been thinking, Mom, this isn't just about offering shelter. It's about creating a program that empowers them to rebuild their lives. They need skills, guidance, and hope, not just a place to stay." Her words struck a chord. The girl who had once obsessed over luxuries now spoke with vision and clarity. "I'm proud of you," I said quietly, "but it's a big undertaking. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Mara nodded. "I've never felt more ready. I've seen what happens when people are left helpless. I don't want anyone to feel as lost as I did." At the beach house, Mara moved quickly, inspecting each room. She identified areas for sleeping, communal spaces, and even a small office for managing donations and schedules. She drafted a plan for renovations, deciding what could be done immediately and what needed resources from the foundation. I helped her, but she led the effort, making decisions with confidence I had rarely seen. Later, while sitting on the porch, she turned to me. "Mom, I want this to be sustainable. I don't want it to rely entirely on your money. I'll continue working even part-time, and we can use the foundation to train women, provide counseling, and offer small stipends. It has to be about independence, not charity." It was a remarkable transformation. The same woman who had once sold family memories to satisfy a fleeting desire for luxury was now thinking strategically about helping others rise from hardship. Her empathy had grown from experience, and it radiated in every decision she made. That evening, as we returned home, Mara shared an idea I hadn't considered. "Mom, we could also create mentorship circles, women helping other women. I can recruit some of the ladies I work with. They've been through tough times and have wisdom to share. It could be more than a shelter. It could be a community." I smiled, amazed. Mara was no longer the daughter who relied on me to solve her problems. She had internalized every lesson from her struggles: patience, responsibility, humility, and compassion. She was creating something larger than herself, something that could change lives. Just as her life had been changed, that night, as she rested in her room, I sat alone reflecting on the journey. Every hardship, every tear, every late-night cleaning shift had led her here. Mara had learned to value effort over ease, respect over entitlement, and purpose over wealth. And the best part? She had chosen to give back, turning her pain into power for others. Mara has begun transforming the beach house into a sanctuary, but will the first group of women arriving test her patience and empathy and newfound resolve? A few weeks later, the first group of women arrived at the beach house. Each carried a story etched with pain and resilience, yet their eyes held the same uncertainty Mara once had. I watched from the porch as Mara greeted them with calm authority, her previous anxiety replaced by a quiet confidence. "Welcome," she said warmly. "You're safe here. This is a place to rest, to heal, and to find your strength again." Her tone was gentle but firm, instantly creating an atmosphere of trust. One by one, the women followed her inside, placing their few belongings in neat corners she had prepared. Some looked around in awe, others in guarded suspicion. Mara led them through the house, pointing out communal areas, the small library she had curated with books on personal growth and practical skills, and a cozy kitchen where everyone would share meals. "This isn't just a place to stay," she explained. "You'll also have workshops, support groups, and opportunities to learn new skills that can help you regain independence." It was one thing to plan the program. It was another to implement it with real people, each carrying a unique set of fears, frustrations, and expectations. One woman, Claire, hesitated at the doorway, clutching her child's hand tightly. Mara knelt down and spoke softly. "I know it's hard to trust again, but you're allowed to lean on us. You don't have to do this alone." Claire's eyes softened, a small smile breaking through her tension. Later, during their first communal meal, Mara observed quietly, letting the women interact and share their stories at their own pace. She noticed how they initially held back, how old patterns of shame and fear emerged even in a safe space. Yet gradually, laughter began to fill the room, small at first, then louder, more confident. Mara's heart swelled. She realized that her role wasn't just to manage the house. It was to nurture a culture of hope, dignity, and mutual support. After the women went to rest, Mara came to the porch, her face glowing with quiet satisfaction. "Mom," she said, "this is harder than I imagined. I expected challenges, but I didn't expect how deeply people carry their struggles. Each one has a lifetime of pain. I want to help them all, but it's overwhelming." I placed my hand over hers. "Mara, you don't have to fix everyone at once. You've already done the most important thing, creating a place where they can start again. The rest will follow, one step at a time." She nodded, understanding. It reminded me of her own journey, the slow, painstaking process of rebuilding trust, self-respect, and responsibility. Mara was now guiding others through that process, not with money or power, but with empathy and wisdom earned from her own hardships. That night, as she watched the women sleeping peacefully, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "I finally understand what Dad wanted me to see. The value of effort, compassion, and true independence. The women have settled in, but as the days progress, old habits and unexpected conflicts will test Mara's patience, teaching her that guiding others is even more challenging than guiding herself." Now, A few weeks into running the beach house shelter, Mara quickly realized that compassion alone wasn't enough. Managing a home for women escaping trauma was far more complicated than she had anticipated. Conflicts arose, tensions flared, and the delicate balance she had created was threatened more than once. One morning, a disagreement broke out between two of the residents, Emma and Claire, over household chores. Emma, frustrated from a long night with her sick child, snapped at Claire for leaving dishes in the sink. Claire, feeling unfairly criticized, retorted angrily, igniting a small but heated argument. Mara immediately intervened, guiding them to separate rooms. To cool down before addressing the issue, she sat them both down later in the day. "I understand that living here brings up stress and old patterns," she said calmly. "But this is a place for growth, not conflict. We all have to respect each other, especially when emotions run high. We solve problems together, not against each other." Slowly, the two women nodded, and Mara could see the tension melt into tentative understanding beyond conflicts. Practical challenges weighed heavily on her. Supplies ran low, bills needed attention, and the paperwork for the foundation and outreach programs was relentless. Mara often stayed up late, reviewing budgets and planning workshops, determined to make sure no one felt neglected. She drew strength from the progress she could see, small victories like a woman gaining confidence to apply for a job, or another finishing a personal goal she had set for herself. Yet, Mara's greatest challenge was her own emotional limits. She had expected to guide these women with patience and empathy, but the intensity of their pain mirrored her own past struggles with Edward. Some nights after everyone had gone to bed, Mara found herself staring at the ceiling, exhausted, wondering if she was doing enough. She remembered her mother's words, "You don't have to fix everyone at once. One step at a time." Those words became her anchor. One evening, after a particularly long day, Mara walked along the beach alone, the salty wind soothing her spirit. She reflected on how far she had come, from the terrified, desperate young woman who had returned home after Europe to the confident, compassionate leader who could manage a shelter and still keep her own life together. The waves whispered a reminder that healing, like the tide, was a gradual process, full of highs and lows, but ultimately steady and relentless. Returning to the house, she found a note from Claire. "Thank you, Mara, for listening when no one else would. You make this house feel like hope, not just walls." Mara smiled, realizing that even small gestures could have immense impact. She understood that guiding others through recovery required patience, humility, and unwavering commitment. Just when Mara begins to feel confident in her role as a mentor and guide, an unexpected crisis arrives that could threaten the shelter and force her to confront her own fears in ways she never imagined. Mara had settled into a rhythm with the shelter, the beach house slowly transforming from a quiet home into a lively space of hope. But peace rarely lasts unchallenged. One rainy morning, a frantic phone call shattered the calm. "Mara, you need to come quickly. There's been an accident." It was Elena, one of the women staying at the shelter. Mara grabbed her coat and ran through the pouring rain, heart pounding. By the time she reached the house, she found Clara, a young mother, sitting on the porch steps, trembling. Her child had fallen and hurt their arm, and in her panic, Clara had nearly driven off in her car with the injured child, thinking she could get help herself. Mara's mind raced. She calmly took the child from Clara's arms and assessed the injury, a badly bruised arm but thankfully no fracture. After contacting a pediatrician, she helped Clara calm down, gently guiding her to focus on what needed to be done instead of panicking. Watching Clara's tears, Mara remembered the days she herself had felt helpless, trapped by circumstances she couldn't control. Now she realized she was exactly where she needed to be, a source of guidance and stability for those in chaos. Later that afternoon, as the rain softened into a gentle drizzle, Mara convened a small meeting with the shelter residents. "Today reminded us that life doesn't wait for us to be ready," she said, her voice firm but empathetic. "Accidents happen, challenges happen, but what matters is how we respond, together, not alone." The women nodded, and for the first time, Mara felt the subtle shift from being their caretaker to becoming a true mentor. They looked at her not just with gratitude, but with respect and trust. The incident also forced Mara to confront her own fears. What if something more serious had happened? Could she protect the people she cared about? That night, as she walked along the moonlit shore, She felt the familiar tension of responsibility, but now it was accompanied by a quiet confidence. She had learned to face fear with clarity, not avoidance, and to act decisively even when her heart raced. Meanwhile, Mara noticed subtle changes in the women she guided. Emma, the one who had argued over chores weeks ago, had started taking initiative in organizing daily schedules. Claire had found courage to pursue a part-time job, inspired by Mara's example. Each small success became a ripple, strengthening the shelter as a whole and proving that resilience could be taught, nurtured, and embraced. But just as Mara allowed herself a sense of accomplishment, another note arrived, this one anonymous. "You think you've fixed everything? But someone from the past is watching. They won't let it go so easily." Mara's stomach tightened. Who could it be? Was it someone connected to Edward's schemes? Or someone entirely new? Her thoughts raced, knowing that while the shelter had thrived so far, an unforeseen challenge was approaching, one that could test everything she had built and force her to confront secrets she had long buried. Just when Mara believes she's regained control of her life, a mysterious message from the past hints at dangers that could threaten her family, her shelter, and the hard-earned peace she's fought for. What comes next will challenge her strength in ways she's never faced. 11. Mara couldn't shake the words of the mysterious note. Someone from the past is watching. The message felt like a cold wind slipping into her very bones. She tried to focus on the shelter and the women depending on her, but the unease lingered. That evening, as she closed the doors after everyone had gone to bed, she noticed a faint light flickering across the window near the porch. Her heart skipped a beat. Who could it be at this hour? Slowly, she approached and saw a shadow retreating behind the nearby trees. Mara's instincts told her it wasn't a harmless passerby. She called the local police, but by the time officers arrived, there was no one there. Only the faint impression of footprints in the mud leading toward the road. Whoever it was had been deliberate and careful. Mara's mind raced back to Edward. Could he have found a way to interfere from afar? Or was this someone else entirely? Perhaps someone who had been involved in the fraudulent dealings she thought were over? The next morning, Mara called a meeting with her staff and the women staying at the shelter. She explained that they needed to remain vigilant, not in fear, but in preparation. "Sometimes the past returns to test how far we've really come," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We've built something strong here, and no one should ever make us feel powerless again." The women nodded, a mixture of concern and resolve in their eyes. Mara realized that part of her leadership was now about protecting them, not just guiding them. Despite the tension, Mara kept up her routine. She supervised repairs at the shelter, helped organize classes for the residents, and even spent evenings preparing meals. Yet her mind constantly replayed the night's events, and she began noticing small, strange occurrences. A misplaced key, an unfamiliar car parked outside, occasional phone calls that ended before she could answer. Each incident chipped at her sense of security, reminding her that the world outside, her walls could be unpredictable and dangerous. In the midst of this, Mara found solace in her daughter Ella, who had grown stronger with each passing day. Ella's schoolwork was improving, and she was beginning to volunteer at the shelter, assisting the other women. Seeing her daughter develop independence and compassion gave Mara a renewed sense of purpose. But she couldn't ignore the growing tension. Whoever was watching wasn't just testing her. They were probing for weaknesses. That evening, as Mara reviewed some documents at her desk, she heard the soft creak of the back door. Her pulse quickened, but before panic could take over, she remembered the lessons of patience and observation she had spent months teaching. She moved toward the sound, keeping herself hidden in the shadows. And then she saw it, a figure small but deliberate, moving across the porch toward the house. Mara's instincts screamed at her. This was no ordinary visitor. A shadow from Mara's past has returned, testing her courage and threatening the safety of everything she's built. Will she be able to confront this hidden threat before it unravels the life she fought so hard to restore? Mara held her breath as the shadow crept closer, every muscle in her body tensed. She knew fear was a tool for those who wanted to control others, and she refused to let it dominate her. Slowly, she stepped out of the shadows, calling the intruder's name. "Who's there?" The figure froze, startled. A moment later, a familiar voice answered. "Mara, it's me." Her heart skipped. It was not Edward. It was someone else from her past, a distant relative who had once tried to manipulate her inheritance. long before she ever met Edward. Relief mixed with caution as Mara demanded an explanation. The relative, looking nervous and remorseful, confessed that they had come to apologize and to warn her that others might still be interested in the secrets of the properties and the shelter. They admitted that their actions years ago had contributed to the complications Mara and Ella had faced and that they had been watching to make sure she wasn't harmed further. Mara listened carefully, allowing the weight of years and past betrayals to settle. She realized that confrontation was necessary, not just with outsiders, but with herself. She had spent months teaching Ella the value of responsibility, independence, and courage, and now it was her turn to live those lessons fully. The relative left with a promise to stay away, and Mara felt a sense of closure she hadn't known she needed. The next morning, sunlight poured into the shelter as Mara walked through the rooms, greeting the women and children who now called this place home. Ella was there, organizing books for the literacy program she had started. Mara's heart swelled with pride. They had transformed not only their own lives, but also the lives of many others. The lessons of hardship, humility, and perseverance had become the foundation of their shared life. Later that day, Mara and Ella returned to the beach house. It felt different now, not just a family home, but a symbol of resilience, love, and the ability to rebuild from loss. Together they walked through each room, reflecting on how far they had come. "Mom," Ella said softly, "I understand now why you let me face everything on my own. I needed to learn how to stand up for myself, how to value what really matters." Mara smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "And you did it beautifully. You didn't just survive, you grew stronger, wiser, and kinder." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the water, Mara felt a profound sense of peace. The trials they had endured had not broken them. They had forged a bond deeper than blood, built on respect, understanding, and shared purpose. Together, they decided to continue the shelter's work, helping other women regain independence and dignity. That night, as Mara sat on the porch, stars twinkling above, she whispered to Robert, her late husband, in a quiet voice filled with gratitude, "We did it, my love. Our daughter learned, and we built something lasting. Justice, real justice, has been served." Who was beside her, a quiet smile on her face. "This is only the beginning," she said. Together, they embraced the future, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever life might bring. Ending. Note: Mara and Ella emerged from hardship not just unbroken, but transformed. Their story reminds us that true strength comes from love, resilience, and the courage to face her hardest lessons. Thank you for reading, listening to our story. If you enjoyed Mara and Ella's journey of growth, resilience, and transformation, don't forget to like this video to show your support, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a life story like this. Comment below and tell us which part inspired you the most. Share this story with your friends and family to spread the message of love, courage, and learning from life's challenges. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories that touch hearts and teach valuable lessons. See you in the next story with love and respect.